All right, welcome everyone. Welcome. I'm really excited to have one of our guest speakers at our upcoming Start Your Movement experience, and it's Emerald Greenforest. And if you don't know Emerald, Emerald is a pioneer and thought leader. She's a creative maverick, and she is really a innovator in the space, and she sees what's going on in the future. And to get right into it, our topic today is converting your calling into cash flow, because I think that's what's going on in the space so much right now is like people feel like they have to make a choice between serving their calling or making money and making a living. So first of all, welcome. And, I'd love to get your thoughts. And how did you ever come up with this? Was this your own journey? Was this, what was this about?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, Eiji, and I'm really excited to be here. And I'm also excited to be a speaker at Start Your Movement experience. So I just want to talk briefly about the calling, and not just about the calling, but about where we're at culturally as well, and the importance of people who have these callings on their heart to start a movement. And so for me, the experience of a calling, I received my first real experience of a calling to serve back in the early 2000s. And the calling was that I was meant to bring out into the world new ways of being in the world, new ways of thinking, and new ways of accessing our divine potential. And at the same time, I was a single mom raising my son. And so for me, my calling left me feeling torn. I definitely felt that.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah.
I can hear that.
Sorry about that. We're good. We're good now.
Okay. All right. So the calling left me feeling torn. However, it was so undeniable that I had to pursue it. And I'm really grateful that the technology angels came along and gave us the opportunity to do things like we're doing right now, virtual speaking and live streams and all of these other things, because it did allow me, while I was in that time period, to, as a single mother, to be able to balance both, right? And I think that can be something that can be a challenge for people as well. If they've got other things going on in their life and all of a sudden this calling arrives, it's like, oh my God, how's the rest of my life going to manage? Never mind the money piece. Mm-hmm. So for me, the calling is not just the desire that your own heart has to serve, its gifts, its unique contribution into the world, but it's also the people who are praying for either the solution to a problem or the fulfillment of their own dreams and desires that only you and your heart and your voice and your body of work can actually match and meet. And so the calling is got two sides to it. And so when people are praying or thinking about what they want or they desire or the challenge that they want to see resolved in their own life or in the world, those prayers are going out vibrationally and they're literally strumming your heartstrings, just like, when a bat sends out a signal or a whale sends out a signal or a dolphin sends out a signal, that signal bounces off your heartstrings and it's a perfect match. So that's how I see the calling.
Well, I love it because most people, I know myself included in the past, used to see the calling as one-sided in essence, like I'm just being called to do something, but also those who are praying for solutions or praying for a guide or someone to come into their lives or a solution for their challenges, or they're calling us out as well. So it's from above and from the people we're born to serve. So I think that's very, very profound in that aspect. My question is this, because I believe that I believe that there's we have a certain role to fulfill here on earth, and that only we can do it, not from an ego place, but we all have a unique design and purpose to do it. And I could see how it could be like two sides of the same coin. On one side, it's like, oh, well, that's going to make me driven, determined to do that, because if I don't do it, then it's not going to get done, or other people have to leave, move away from what they're supposed to do to compensate what we're here to do. So that's kind of the driven side of it. And the opposite side of that is the overwhelmed side. Like, oh my God, that's so much responsibility. Like, if I don't do this, it's not going to get done, and we could get paralyzed in fear. And you know, and some people may be like, no, someone else will do it. Someone else will do it, or so. But I mean, we will never know for sure, really. But at least personally, I'm not willing to take that chance that if I don't do what I'm here to do, that it doesn't get done. But I don't want to take that chance. But what about for those people who are thinking like, oh, well, you know what? I'm only me, and, you know, I'm sure someone else has this figured out, or someone else can do this. Because I think that's probably the number one biggest disease of why people aren't taking action. They're waiting for other people to do it. And so what's your take on that?
Yes, so I'm so glad that you said that, because I have a perfect story about a client of mine that was in that exact same position. About a decade ago, I met her. And when I met her, she had just literally, like, on the drive across the desert to the retreat center where we were ultimately to meet, she had just received the calling. And the calling that she received was to help people who were sitting with dying loved ones. And as she arrived at this retreat, she was actually the retreat photographer. As she arrived, somebody pointed her in my direction when she told them the story of having, like, suddenly having this epiphany and this calling that came through. She was directed to me, and she sat down across from me, and I validated, like, the first thing I did for her was validated, like, yes, this is for you to do. Yes, this is your calling. Yes, you are hearing this correctly. And what happened with her was she went into that exact space, the fear of being overwhelmed. I couldn't possibly do this. This is way too big for me. I'm not worthy of doing this thing. I don't have the capacity financially or creatively or, you know, time-wise or any of those things. Like, she immediately went into, well, okay, this is happening, but I'm not big enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not worthy enough. Like, all of that crap came up for her right away. And so she ended up working with me. And as a result of our working together, within 6 weeks, she had said the big yes to the calling, because the calling doesn't get answered unless you actually say yes and start to take action in service to that calling. And, you know, I think the other thing that people kind of sometimes get confused or stuck in is that they only see it having to be a certain way. And the calling, all it really is asking you to do is say yes, and then yes to the next thing, and yes to the next thing. And it will evolve sometimes on its own into something that you weren't even expecting. So what happened with her, and her name is Stacy Canfield. She's got a new name now because she just recently remarried. But at the time, her name was Stacy Canfield. And Stacy ended up within 6 weeks writing a book called The Soul Sitters, starting a website called The Soul Sitters, which soul sitters, who are people who are sitting with dying loved ones all over the world, are able to share their stories on that site. She created a special thing for people who are in the dying process to, it's like a will for how the dying process is going to go. Like, I want this kind of music, and I want these kind of flowers in the room.
Oh,
and
wow.
I want this kind of, you know, these are the people I want with me. And, like, just really compassionately, deeply touching body of work. And can you imagine what the world would be like if Stacy had stayed in her fear and just been like, oh, somebody else can do this? It would never have happened. It just, because it was her calling to do. And to kind of fast forward a little bit, you know, the money piece for her was a consideration. Like, how am I going to do this and support putting it all together, and, you know, continue to do my photography work and all the other things. And ultimately what happened was her saying yes and bringing this body of work into the world, and committing, regardless of what the circumstances look like. What ended up happening was ultimately she was able to turn it into a foundation that's now financially supported. So not every movement has to be a entrepreneurial, like in the traditional profit-bearing entrepreneurial model, but all movements require financial flow and
Absolutely.
support. It's part of what makes the movement move.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I call it the financial engine. You know, how do you fund the movement? Whether it's directly related to the movement or you have a business engine or a nonprofit engine that funds it. Because, you know, in the old days, as artists or creatives, we used to get commissioned to do our work. So it's not like artists had to go get a job like Pablo Picasso or Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo. They didn't have to go drive Uber or Lyft in order to go do their art. Someone commissioned them to do it so they could fully focus on their art. So it's really like, I do believe if you have that clear message of that vision, mission, purpose that we teach at Start Your Movement, that allows people to say, yes, I want to buy into that vision. I want to buy into that mission, and I'm in for your purpose. How can I support you? And from a practical business perspective, I do these prayers almost, I wish daily, but there's almost no such thing as always or never. You know, as soon as you know I say never, it just happens, right? So it's somewhere in between always and never, but almost daily. You know, when I'm aligned, I make a prayer like saying, send me the people I'm born to serve today. And then my secondary prayer is send me those who are born to serve me today. And it's kind of like, so I'm calling forth the people I'm born to serve, and then I'm calling those who are born to serve me in some way to do it. So then it's that give and receive as well. Well, that's fascinating. Let me see. There was a question I had, but about it's like taking that leap, and you're saying like, you know, so my key takeaway from you is go for the big yes, and then the next step will be shown to you. And it's not the big picture plan of every little step. It's usually just the next step. And like Martin Luther King said, we don't have to see the whole staircase. We just need to see the next step. The next step appears. I
have something else to add. I have something else to add to that. And in this particular case, the way that it worked out was she came immediately like into a space where there were other highly conscious, supportive, validating people. And so events like Start Your Movement, which you're hosting in a few weeks, are essential for anybody who's newly awakened to their calling, and also for people who've been in their calling and saying yes to their calling for a long time. I've been in my calling and saying yes to my calling for, you know, over a decade now. And I want to immerse myself in places and spaces with people who have vision, with people who can validate my vision, with people who can lift me up, and with people who are, you know, willing to invest their own life force, their own money, their own energy, their own time into high-minded, visionary, creative, new, innovative ways of thinking and being in this world.
I love that, because and the power of validation and encouragement, like, wow, that's a great idea. How can I support you? Or what can I do to support? Or I want to support. And because sometimes, like in this journey as a leader, it can be a lonely path of isolation. And it's so important to meet other like-minded souls out there. And what I know this is when one has their own movement, it's not like, oh, this is my movement, I can't focus on any other movements. As a movement maker, we support one another. And it's like, oh, I love your movement. Let me support you in the way I can. It's not my movement, but I believe in your movement regarding education or on human trafficking or on, like, you know, having relationships get back to like whatever it is, like getting back to what is. But I'm just saying, like, there's some key pieces is like that support, and like I believe everyone should lead a movement and join a movement. So I'm part of many movements in the ones that we advise, and I think it's really important, that validation, because without validation, without people around you saying you're on the right track, you're doing the right thing, keep going, we could feel sometimes like delusional, or we feel like we may be delusional or crazy. And it's the crazy ones who think they can change the world, but they're the actual only ones who do. So, but it's so helpful to just have that vote of confidence and that encouragement, but also getting actual people who are willing to back up their words of support with some action too, and just be a sounding board or introduction here and there. So I'm curious because, how I define my calling, like the movement is not necessarily my calling, it's a vehicle for my calling. The movement is the vehicle for my calling, but my calling really is to ignite souls. I'm here to light people up, and I'm here to light people up to step fully into their calling, even when it's scary, even when they don't know how they're going to fund it, and really be at peace, trusting in source, a higher power, God, universe, whatever resonates with you. But it's really to go fully forward, because Martin Luther King, even the great Martin Luther King, wanted to quit. I mean, if he wanted to quit, and I kind of joke because I know you've been at events and you produce events and retreats and stuff, and he had the same thoughts as we do. Like the day before his I Have a Dream speech, he said, I wonder if anyone's going to show up. Like, we always have these kind of thoughts, right? This is my, and yes, people showed up, like 250,000 people showed up. Talk about a huge event, right? But if he has those doubts, or if he wanted to quit, it's totally okay for us to have that feeling. But what he had was that, the whole Southern Leadership Council, how many people were supporting him, encouraging him, keep going, keep fighting the good fight. And so, but I would love to know what your calling is, what do you see as your calling?
Yeah, well, my truest, deepest calling is to replace fear with love on this planet. And when we are, when we have replaced fear with love, then it will be a natural, easy yes for everyone to say, I'm in, I'm here to do this thing and let's do it. We're going to have fun, and it's going to be easeful and graceful and joyful and delightful. And that's why the validation is so important, because when somebody brings a vision to you, you're absolutely right. You can think you're crazy. I mean, I thought I was crazy, and I felt very isolated and very alone when this calling came through. I was like, okay, I'm replacing fear with love on the planet. That sounds good. You know what I mean? And over the years, I've created multiple vehicles through which that calling has been served. I can't say that I've specifically created a movement in the way that you support people to do that, but I have created momentum and motion and movement in the world as a result of answering my calling. And so, I think the most important thing to remember is there is a saying, a biblical saying, and I'm not, deeply religious person at all. I am, however, a deeply spiritual person, and I do believe that there are nuggets of wisdom in all spiritual traditions. And one of the nuggets of wisdom in the Christian tradition is wherever two or more are gathered, there is love. And so whenever we can validate another person, what we are doing with our validation is we are loving them. We are affirming them. We are loving their calling. We are loving their movement, and we are fueling and energizing them and that movement and that calling with our love and our affirmation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe you're a key critical component to movements, because there are catalysts and then there are catalyzers of the catalyst. Yeah. And that's what you have. And you are the catalyst of the catalyst, because some catalysts are meant for masses. Others catalysts are meant for the leaders. And you're definitely a leader of leaders as well. And yeah, I love that, because even in Think and Grow Rich, it says when two or more are gathered, a third mind appears, like the mastermind. In Christianity, it's more when two or more come together in Jesus' name, Jesus shows up, his presence shows up, and Jesus is in the purest form of the tradition is love, you know? And so I love that. So what's a couple things is, well, right now, yeah, I want to, for those of you who have this nudge and this calling or so, want to move forward but don't know where to start or how to begin, I want to personally invite you to start your movement. It's our, we only do this. This is our first brand new one. And we only plan on doing it maybe once a year, but this is for leaders of leaders. And this is where you get crystal clear on your vision, mission, and purpose. And you get to attract your first follower, and and we promise that you'll leave with at least 3 collaboration partners. So you're not doing it alone. And you may even find someone to partner up with, to co-create with, but also you're getting the building blocks of what it really takes about making a movement. People say, I want to start a movement, but no one knows how. So we're going to teach you exactly how, based on my personal experience of being born into one, seeing the spread of sushi in North America, to being the first follower in the Hug It Forward movement, of seeing one person I want to give out hugs in San Diego. Now a bottle school movement in Guatemala started, where over 150 schools have been built just because one person said, I want to give out hugs in San Diego. So you don't need to see the whole picture. You just need to follow the nudge, the fire in your belly, and you don't need to be clear. It will be shown to you. So yeah, we'll have a link here. We have a link here. And for those of you in Emerald's tribe and community, she has something super special for you. So definitely, I would check that out and come join us with other leaders. We have, and the event is a who's who. We have leaders of leaders who all lead their own masterminds, their own tribes, their retreats, their own live events as well. So it's going to be fascinating for you, for people who you may be on their mailing list, that you're interacting with as peers and colleagues, because we're, at the end of the day, like Emerald and I and all of us, we're on the same team here. We're all for the team good, team planet, team humanity. We're here to really make that work. And so yeah, just look for the link. If you can't find it for some reason, just message us and we will get that to you. But yeah, real quick is, yes, that's what I want to do. What is some practical tips of moving from fear to love, real quick? Because it's like there's a bridge, right? Here's fear and here's love. What's the bridge? What is some quick steps that we can move away from fear and move towards love?
Yeah, great question. So I want to specifically talk about converting your calling to cash flow, because I think the biggest fear that comes up for people, unfortunately, one of the biggest fears, I'm not going to say the biggest fear, but it seems to be the biggest fear that comes up for most people, is the money piece, right? And so, part of the process of saying yes to your calling is also saying yes to learning how to, what I call, exercise your asking muscle, right? So part of the bridge from fear to love is recognizing that there's power in using your word in a way that brings to you what it is that you need. And that requires being willing to ask. So asking for support, which includes money. So I like to put the dollar sign in the S of the word support, because support can be much beyond money. It can be, sharing resources in all kinds of other ways, but I like to put the dollar sign right there at the front, turn the S into a dollar sign, to remember for my own self that asking for money is a priority when we are answering our calling. Because without money to fuel the movement, without cash flow to grease the wheels of your entrepreneurship, you're not moving, you're not going forward. And with the money, you can go forward exponentially more quickly. And it's also an indication that you're on the right track when people are voting for you with their dollars. So, so I think the practical thing is to open your mouth, literally practice opening your mouth and asking for what you need. Sometimes you need to actually rehearse. Sometimes you need to actually practice getting it out of your mouth. I would really like you to fund my movement. And right now I need $1 million to underwrite my, vision. Like getting really clear practically and tactically and strategically on what's the number. Like, don't be afraid of doing the math. What's the number? And then triple it, right? Whatever number you get, triple it. And then start asking, and practicing that asking, exercising the asking muscle is one of my tips.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And practicing is so valuable because then it gets easier. But if it's asking for first time and to someone that, I think it makes a huge difference. And there's no shame. It's actually an honor and privilege to ask people to fund your movement. It's a gift when you ask people to fund your movement. Here's my vision. Here's my mission. Would you please help fund it?
Yeah.
And
we have time for a little story.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. So I was just at an event called the Landmark Forum. It was my first time there last weekend. And a young woman stood up when they were making an offer for the advanced course. So they made this offer for the advanced course. It was $725 to take the advanced course. And this young woman of, I think she was Korean origin, but don't quote me on that, stood up and she confronted the event leader and said, "You're a white woman and you're in privilege." And, she was like, "You don't know what it's like to be a just newly graduated student. And I'm on this immigration problem." And like, she was like talking out into the room some of her challenges. And at one point she said, she had been raped 3 times. And she has this idea for creating some artificial intelligence thing that will allow the brain of the victim to be monitored so that it can be put into the rape kit as proof in the courts. Like, brilliant. Like, this young woman is freaking brilliant, right? But she's also running this whole fear story. So the event leader said, "Well, I've seen miracles happen." And now, she's again brilliant, like MIT or Harvard or someplace, right? And the room was filled with mathematicians and the analytic people, right? And she's like, statistically, the miracle's not going to happen for me. Like, she's literally doing the statistics that the miracle's not going to happen for me. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, hell no, you aren't saying a miracle's not happening in this room when I'm here, right? And so I ended up inspiring the person next to me. He and I stood up together and I said, "Listen, if 50 people in this room put $20 on this stage, this young woman," and it ended up there was 2 young women who both had issues and both were brilliant. I said, if 50 people put $20 on this stage, we ended up actually scholarshiping both of them by the break. The room ended up scholarshiping both of them by the break. And by the time we finished with Landmark, 2 additional people got fully scholarshiped. And what was amazing, Eiji, about the experience was I started with my mouth and $20 and turned that into $2,800. Just like that for 4 people to be scholarshiped. And there were people in the room. There were plenty of people who just gave us $20. But there were people in the room. The 3rd scholarshiped person, all we had left was $260 left over after the first 2. We had $260 left over. And I looked at him and I was like, "I have $260 in my hand and it's now. If you want this, it's now." And he was like, "Oh, I don't know what I'm going to be able to." And I was like, "It's now." And he said, "I'll take it." And 2 seconds, a woman came up and sponsored him for the rest, like $500 So if you don't ask, if you don't speak out, if you don't exercise your asking muscle, you are robbing people of the opportunity to be generous.
I love that, because generosity, when you give people an opportunity to be generous, it is a gift, and it feels so good to give as well. I love that. So yes, and wow, so much good stuff. It's like so there's a couple key things, and I want to share this because like this is my soapbox, is that you must vote with your dollars. You must vote with your dollars. If you have a favorite restaurant that's a mom and pop if you say, I'll go next time or next month, that restaurant may not be there without your voting. And so if there's causes, if there's organizations or people or leaders that you want to support, please vote with your dollars. Don't assume someone else will take care of it, like someone else will take care of your calling, that you must support the movements and you must vote with your dollars. Because if you don't vote with your dollars, those organizations have less support and it may be challenging. So, regardless of whether it's like, we're creating a movement of movements. We would love for you to help fund our movement to support movement makers. But even if it's someone else or anyone, we must learn and get in the habit of supporting the people we believe in with our dollars. Because one of my mentors said people show commitments in two areas. Number one is time, and number two is money. And so, whatever the products you like, the service providers you like, whatever it is, you must support them with their dollars, because we are in a economy. And so if you want the people who you want to serve you to be thriving, then you must support. And this is the rise of conscious consumerism, that millennials and younger generations are already voting with their dollars. They're not saying, hey, Philip Morris, let me give you more money so you could send candy-flavored vape cigarettes to high schoolers, or here, Monsanto, let me give you all this money so you could promote Roundup and cause more cancer. No, they're not choosing that. People are choosing from companies that they believe in, but also in our personal development transformation space too. I think people do need to vote with their dollars as well. And many of you are, so I want to thank you for that. But I just want this awareness, because I grew up in the restaurant industry, and there's a lot of great restaurants that I used to love that are out of business because not enough people voted with their dollars. Now, you could say, could they have been better at their marketing? Yes, absolutely. But also, it is a consumer's responsibility too to support the groups that they like as well. So, so you have a unique talk off my soapbox, but I do feel it is. But here's why it's important. Because here's why it's important is because when you're making the shift into your calling and you want your movement to be funded, and you're moving out of the old paradigm of chasing money and now serving your purpose, you're going to have to ask people to fund you. And so if everyone has this mindset, like, I'll do it later, how much tougher is your journey going to be? So what you just shared is so important, is to ask people to support. And so for those of you who are moved and would like to start a movement or get there, I highly recommend, because the truth is this, is while my intention is to do this annually, I don't know. We need to get support to do it annually, right? I'm not going to make this a complete charity piece. So we need you to support you. And if you feel called, and so, come join us at the live event. If you're international, we do have live stream options available, but we have people flying in from all over for this. But if this moves you, we may, and the truth is, it's like, we would like in 2020, our goal is to get a top keynote, like a Brene Brown to a keynote, but we need to make sure 2019 is functional and stable, because I do raise, I'm a sole breadwinner with my wife and 2 little kids. So they are a priority as well. But I do know that if I follow the higher purpose, it will be taken care of. But, that's my call to action, is if you feel moved, and check out startyourmovement.org, or the link, and Emerald special link, or the link here, and check it out. If it resonates with you, I highly recommend you take action. And if it's not for you, would you mind sharing with 2 or 3 other people who may be a fit for? Because I can't do the marketing all by myself. This is how you get movements to start, is you ask people to share it, to spread it. So that's what would benefit us, is if you could share this movement, this movements of movements, because our vision is to change the game in dissolving the world's greatest challenges. So all the ills of the world, we're creating a template to do that, and we need your support. And we don't need your support next year. We don't need your support 10 years from now. We need your support now, right now. And so you have a, I'm so excited about your killer talk. And so it's the 5 ways. So if you don't mind sharing, you're going to deliver a keynote talk, a TED-like talk that's going to be super impactful and really helping them to, bring more wealth while they're serving their calling. So tell us more about what you're going to speak about.
Yeah, so my talk is called The 5 Ways We Ward Off Wealth and the One Thing to Do to Welcome It Instead. And my intention is to just really help to illuminate and also to engage people in really reflecting on how they are self-sabotaging themselves and preventing the wealth from coming in to support their movements. So, it's a really important thing if you are called to be clear with your relationship with the monetary aspect of things. And so the purpose of the talk is to really shine a light on the ways that we actually ward off wealth and to facilitate a little bit of how to welcome it instead. I'm not going to be able to facilitate a whole lot in 15 minutes, but I will do the very best I can to bring as much concise information as possible to wake people up and catalyze them and open them up to being able to receive more wealth and steward it wisely, because wealth is all about stewardship. In addition to, the money piece, it's also about managing and channeling that money in ways that are generative. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I love it because you mentioned, and I know some of the components of your talk, and a lot of these things we're not even aware of that we're warding off wealth. And the secret is first awareness and then the shifts. But one of the key things is we're attracting, Emerald will be there, obviously I'll be there. We have Kylie Slavic, we have Trudy LeBron, who's brilliant. She talks about social change and how to measure impact. It's like who's who. And just by being in the presence of the high vibe, highly conscious leaders, you can't help but transform and elevate yourself and also get that validation. So I'm really excited about your talk. And truly, I mean, if you get a chance to meet Emerald in person, she's like this magic sorceress and change agent, and you can't help. She won't let you leave her side without you being transformed. That's the type of woman she is, and that's why I love to bring her on. And thank you so much for having us. And go click the link, and we'll have the link up, or message us. Emerald, for those of you in Emerald's community, she has a special offer for it because she is one of our honored guests and speakers. So thank you so much. Do you have any final parting words? And hope, I'd love to see each and every one of you at Start Your Movement. And then please share with 2 or 3 other people who has something big, or they have the heart, the desire, but they're not clear, or they need the building blocks, or they need just the support team around. Share with 2 to 3 other people. So what do you have?
So my parting words are, if you have been inspired by this conversation today, if you have been validated by this conversation today, if you have been awakened by this conversation today, then take inspired action. And inspired action happens now. It doesn't happen 2 days from now, or 3 hours from now, or 2.5 weeks from now when we're about to go on stage. It happens now. Just like what I did with that young man at the Landmark event when I was standing there with $260. It wasn't the $725. It was $260, and he was resisting in that moment because he couldn't see how the rest of it was coming. But I said, it's now. And as soon as he said yes, the rest of it was there for him. So if you're inspired, the time is now to get some momentum under your movement.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Emerald. I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to seeing you at our Start Your Movement immersion experience. And so let's sign off here. And till